guys, this is Frank from Unknown Skies. This has been a very long time and I really wanted to give you guys a fresh new update of what's going on. And there's a lot going on lately, so expect more regular updates in the days and weeks to come. In the UFO community, one of the next important milestones to look forward to is the release of the report that was issued by the Pentagon to give more insights into these UAPs, or so-called unidentified aerial phenomena. In this video I'll talk about a nice summary post I came across on Reddit. Since the release of the currently very well-known UFO videos in 2017 by To the Stars Academy, things have slowly but surely been heating up. And quite some interesting things happened in the last week specifically. More about this in a few minutes. Also check out the description where I will post some more interesting links as well. Before we dive into recent events of the last few days, I want to highlight a statement from Bloomberg that is sadly behind a paywall, but you can also check out the article on Yahoo Finance about it. I'll put both links in the description below. In this article, Bloomberg's Anthony Carpaccio says that the Department of Defense made $35 trillion in accounting adjustments in 2019, easily surpassing the $30.7 trillion in such adjustments recorded in 2018. Carpaccio notes that the number dwarfs the $738 billion of defense-related funding in the latest US budget, a spending plan that includes the most expensive weapon systems in the world, including the F-35 jet as well as new aircraft carriers, destroyers and submarines. It's also larger than the entire US economy and underscores the Defense Department's continuing difficulty in balancing its books. I'm just asking myself, how can this not be any bigger news? I mean, obviously I'm not American and it's not my tax money, but apart from that fact, this is pretty ridiculous if you ask me. Also mind, we're talking about accounting adjustments here, so that's technically not money lost somewhere, but rather some double, triple or quadruple counting of the same money. But still, as the Yahoo article points out, it highlights the persistent lack of internal financial controls at the Pentagon, which makes it extremely difficult to account properly for spending in the largest government budget in the world. You can also ask yourself, are they really that incompetent, or is it planned to put some kind of shroud on the whole budget? Now let's switch to recent events. First up, a video from the former Director of National Intelligence, John Lee Ratcliffe, who talks about the To the Stars videos, saying there's a lot more sightings going on all over the world and not just seen by one pilot.
John, you have seen in your role the most intelligence that anybody has seen other than the president as the Director of National Intelligence. And I've been wanting to ask you this next question for a while. I want to ask you about UFOs, unidentified flying objects. The Pentagon is going to come out with a report by June 1st. And in the $2.3 trillion omnibus appropriations legislation passed in January, it includes the Intelligence Authorization Act, money for the Pentagon to continue investigating UFOs. John, we're going to get this report June 1st. Can you tell us, have unidentified flying objects been seen?
Well, sure. We have lots of reports about what we call unidentified aerial phenomenon. And this actually is a program that's been in place for a few years in terms of a task force that has been there under the National Defense Authorization Act. But as you correctly point out, Maria, there's now a report that will be issued by the Pentagon, by the Secretary of Defense and the Director of National Intelligence. I actually wanted to get this information out and declassified before I left office, but we weren't able to get it down into an unclassified format that we could talk about quickly enough. But frankly, there are a lot more sightings than have been made public. Some of those have been declassified. When we talk about sightings, we're talking about objects that have been seen by Navy or Air Force pilots or have been picked up by satellite imagery that frankly engage in actions that are difficult to explain, that movements that are hard to replicate, that we don't have the technology for, or traveling at speeds that exceed the sound barrier without a sonic boom. So in short, things that we are observing that are difficult to explain. And so, there's actually quite a few of those, and I think that information is being gathered and will be put out in a way that the American people can see. We always, when we see these things, Maria, we always look for a plausible explanation. weather can cause disturbances, visual disturbances. Sometimes we wonder whether or not our adversaries have technologies that are a little bit further down the road than we thought or that we realized. But there are instances where we don't have good explanations for some of the things that we've seen. And, when that information becomes declassified, I'll be able to talk a little bit more about that.
Can you tell us where it was seen?
Actually, all over the world. There have been sightings all over the world. And when we talk about sightings, the other thing I will tell you is it's not just a pilot or just a satellite or some intelligence collection. Usually we have multiple sensors that are picking up these things. And so, again, some of this are just they're unexplained phenomenon. And there's actually quite a few more than have been made public. So I think it'll be healthy for as much of this information to get out there as possible so that the American people can see some of the things that we've been dealing with.
Okay, well, that is pretty extraordinary. We so appreciate that you're talking to us about this. Can this year get any weirder? Pandemic, shutdown, UFOs. John Ratcliffe, it's great to see you. Thank you so much.
You
Have
bet.
a good
Thanks,
weekend.
Maria.
Interesting, right? Now, let's take a look at the same response of Senator Rubio when the same interviewer from Fox confronts him about this.
Senator, I want to turn to unidentified objects in the air. I had an exclusive interview with the former Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, the other night on Fox News, where I asked him about this upcoming Pentagon report, which you, of course, have commissioned or encouraged to have a report on these unidentified objects. So, Senator, what about that? What can you tell us about UFOs?
Well, we have things flying over military installations, over military exercises, and other places, and we don't know what it is. It isn't ours. It isn't anything that's registered with the FAA, and in many cases exhibits attributes of things we've never seen, technology, the kinds of technology we haven't seen before, or at least that's what it seems like. I think you have to know what it is, or we have to try to know what it is. That's my view of it, without any preconceived notions. Maybe there's a logical explanation. Maybe it's something that can be explained away. Maybe it's a foreign adversary who's made a technological leap, as you heard the former DNI said. Whatever it is, we need to know the answer to it. The problem with this issue is every time you raise it, people get all nervous. Oh, does this mean UFOs and aliens and extraterrestrial? We don't have to go that far. It's very simple. There are things flying over national security installations. We don't know who they are. We don't know what it is. It isn't ours. We need to find out.
Well, this is absolutely fascinating. So, I mean, from my standpoint, when I heard John Ratcliffe talk about that, I went and I looked up what you've said about the Pentagon report coming up June 1st. What do you think we're going to learn from that Pentagon report on June 1st?
Well, first, I'm not sure they're going to come in on time, to be honest with you, because they miss a lot of deadlines in government on these sorts of things. But we'll get a report at some point. Second is, I don't know if we're going to know what. I mean, I'm not sure that by June 1st they'll have reached a hard conclusion about what they're dealing with, and there may be more questions or new questions than full answers after the fact. I can tell you it's being taken more seriously now than it ever has been. And look, there's a stigma associated with this, all right? When a Navy pilot would report that they saw something, they were told you need to go see the flight surgeon, to check out your head, make sure you're not seeing things. So there's a stigma associated with reporting it, even talking to you about it now, right? I mean, people are going to go out and say, look what these people are focused on when the world is falling apart. So there's a stigma associated with it, and that's, I think, needs to go away. We don't have any preconceived notions about what this is or isn't. We just need to know, or we need to start trying to know. I think the first step is to ask the question. If you don't ask the question, you're not going to get or begin to get answers.
So it's not necessarily like that we have, little ETs running around, aliens, but it could be technology that China or Russia or somebody else has developed that could be ahead of the United States then. That's even more worrisome to me.
Well, again, I don't know. It would be very worrisome. I don't know that to be the case, but we need to start finding out.
Basically, Rubio is confirming that the UAPs are flying over military installations, that they probably aren't ours, and that we need to know who or what they are. And finally, not completely shocking, at the end he says he expects the reports about this will probably not make the deadline in June. Then finally, former intelligence officer Luis Elizondo from the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program reacts to the same video from John Ratcliffe as well.
All right, and now for something completely different. The former National Intelligence Director is revealing a new government report on UFOs will be full of never before seen or heard intel. Okay, joining us right now to discuss is Lou Elizondo. He is the former director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, a Pentagon unit that studied UFOs. Lou, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So part of the evidence apparently is going to show UFOs or some, they're just unidentified objects, breaking the sound barrier without a sonic boom. How is that possible?
Well, I think that's probably the crux of the problem, that we are seeing these, let's call them vehicles, if you will, that are incurring into controlled U.S. airspace, that are displaying performance characteristics that are frankly well beyond anything that we can either replicate or in some cases really even understand.
So when you're talking about that, you're talking about how these things are able to do things that we have no idea how it's possible, given the speed and the altitude and things like that, and the turns and everything like that. I'm sure you've got the top physics experts in the world working on this. Can they come up with any explanation?
I think as we begin to look at this, we're beginning to realize that a lot of this really isn't breaking the laws of physics. What it's doing is really breaking our understanding of the current laws of physics that we are looking at. In essence, these things, if you look at quantum physics, there's a lot of modeling right now that suggests that a lot of this performance can be explained if you have a really deep understanding of quantum physics. And by the way, you're absolutely right. There's 5 unique observables that these things are displaying. One is instantaneous acceleration. The second one is hypersonic velocity. The third one is a bit of an oxymoron, but it's low observability. And then the fourth one is transmedium travel, the ability to operate in different environments. And then the last observable is this, if you will, this weird positive lift or anti-gravity, where you have these vehicles with no wings, no control surfaces, no engines, and yet somehow they're able to fly and frankly outperform some of the very best aircraft that we have in our inventory.
Unbelievable stuff. So when people say, "Oh, you're in that business," how do you explain these UFOs?
Sure. Well, my business has always been that as an investigator. I was an intelligence officer for the U.S. government, so my business was just to find the truth, whatever the truth is, whether it's a terrorism investigation or counter-espionage. Yeah, we applied the same methodologies we did investigating terrorist, if you will, operations and operatives as we did with this. And the information is very compelling. It's real.
Yeah. Okay, it's real. Are they from another planet?
Well, I think it's too early to tell. The 3 options are that have been presented, that is our secret technology, but we've done a terrible job at coordinating the testing of this technology for decades with ourselves, which is highly unlikely. The second option is that it's foreign adversarial technology, which, if you were to ask me, would be a huge intelligence failure of this country because we've been technologically leapfrogged. Or the third option is that it's something completely different. If it's not ours and it's not theirs, well, then it's someone or something else.
I can't wait for this report to come out. Lou, thank you very much for joining us today. Interesting stuff.
Sure, my pleasure.
He sums up beautifully the things that makes these crafts so special in 5 points. The first one being instantaneous acceleration. We've seen this in numerous videos in the last decades, lights moving slowly to suddenly accelerate to ludicrous speeds. Second one, hypersonic velocity. Third one, low observability. Fourth one, transmedium travel, ability to operate in different environments. And the fifth one, weird lift or basically anti-gravity. What do you think of this, guys? What will you expect they will release in June or at a later date if it indeed gets pushed back? Don't you also get the feeling that they are massaging us more and more to disclosure? And one of my biggest questions, why isn't this any bigger news around the world? To enter the bonus video from about 2 years ago, where Elizondo claims the US government is in fact in possession of materials from these craft. If this isn't mind-blowing, I don't know what is.
So let me ask you one last question. Do you believe, based on your decade of serving in the U.S. government on this question, that the U.S. government has in its possession any material from one of these aircrafts?
Ooh, I do, yes.
You think the U.S. government has debris from a UFO in its possession right now?
Unfortunately, Tucker, I really have to be careful of my NDA. I really can't go into a lot of more detail than that.
Okay.
But simply put, yes.
All right. Well, we have a lot more to find out, and I'm glad, very glad that you came on our show tonight. I hope you'll come back.